Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your Unfiltered Fit BFF. Mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who truly understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify your fitness journey so you can lose fat, regain your confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Come on, let's go. Hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm Nathalia Melo, your host. And today I have back Coach Jen. I think we need, Jen, to create a name for these episodes that you're coming on every month. We need to come up with a sassy name. So if anybody has an idea on what we need to call, hit me up. Send me a message. What's up?
This one in particular deserves a special title, I feel like, once we're done.
Yes. So Jen and I have been talking about this for some time. I've been married it's going to be our 10-year anniversary coming up. But Jen is divorced, for you guys that don't know. And we talk a lot about the dating scene or the lack thereof in the dating scene and all this stuff that happens. And I am flabbergasted. Like my flabbers are incredibly gasted by the nonsense that I see. And we do have a lot of members in the Powerhouse Academy and around us that are in midlife and starting in the dating scene again. So I wanted to talk about that because I don't have the experience. And I think that it is also important to talk about this because everybody's always thinking that divorce is the answer and it's always going to be greener on the other side. And there are situations that divorce is the only answer. But I think you bring a very different perspective because you've been married, now you are on the other side. And I think that there are things that you see that you might be able to offer some insight. So what were your biggest surprises, Jen, when you got back into the dating scene?
Oh, goodness, where to start? I mean, first and foremost, just, a little background. I was married for 10 years and now I'm divorced. It will be 6 years this year. So it's been an interesting ride. Let's put it that way. What I have seen over the course of the past 6 years has been the number one takeaway, a complete lack of respect on both sides. The learning from how women present themselves with a lack of respect and then understanding why, and then the men not respecting women. That has to be the major takeaway for myself, but also the inability to have just general conversations, communication, painful. People not really understanding how to even talk anymore.
What do you mean by that?
Not all, but the majority of the way you get into the idea of dating in this single world now is through an app. It's never being out and about organically and meeting people, which some people do. God bless their heart if you're able to. I'm just not at the bar scene at 10 o'clock anymore, not 11 o'clock at night. Sorry.
Okay. Be asleep for 4 hours by day.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost wake up time next day. I don't know. I do this adulting thing, right?
No lie.
Because we turned into adults overnight at some point in time. So you get into an app and the way the men approach you is first they swipe right and then you get the hi. No, literally, that's it. You get a hi.
What do you, like nothing else?
That's it. Or can you believe this weather?
The fuck? Is that the best they can do?
Exactly. Or any good plans for the weekend? Like these are the main immediate texts that you get.
Okay.
Any good plans for the weekend?
I mean, that's a bit more creative than just the hi. Like what are your plans for the weekend? I can, somewhat good conversation started, but hi.
The best though is like nothing spectacular, probably going to meet friends for lunch or whatever the case may be. And you run through what your plans are. And then it turns into, cool. Okay, so how about you? Do you have any good plans? And then you start to try and engage in a conversation. Be like, no. Okay, what's your situation? And you try to engage and there's just one word answers, nothing. And then it goes nowhere past the text. It goes nowhere past those initial messages. So there's never actual attempts at meeting anymore. So I'm clear as day. My profile outright says, you got a week to sit there and engage in conversation with me and invite me out for either coffee or something more.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I'm unmatching. I mean, because I was done. I got to the point where I was like, I'm done.
And whenever you say lack of respect, obviously we are friends and we see very eye to eye with a lot of stuff. But what do you mean by that whenever you say the lack of respect towards women?
Well, we could start with first being propositioned to be bought.
What do you mean by that?
So a few times men have offered what they could provide to me materialistically if I would join them
Ew.
in either dinner, or I've been asked if they could spoil me as long as I wore heels.
Ew. Oh, I'm petty. I would show up in fucking flip-flops in a burqa. Oh, I hate it. Carry on.
Or to be invited into a married couple's home and be the third party.
Shut the fuck up. Stop it. Like, flat out, like, hey, what's up? Do you want to come hang out with us?
My wife and I have an agreement and we invite other people in. We find you beautiful and would think you'd make a great asset to our team.
Our team, like, are we building a corporation? Like, what is happening? I didn't know about all that.
There's been a few of those.
And I have my thoughts. Obviously, we don't have a man here to kind of tell their side of the story, which I'm sure that there might be a reason why men got to where they are now. But we're talking to you, who is a female in your early 40s in the dating scene. Why do you think that there is this lack of respect of men towards women?
So what I've learned, there's multiple reasons. Number one is maybe we shouldn't categorize it as a lack of respect. I take it that way, right? That's my perception. Because if you're going to approach me with a very sexual undertone, the innuendos are very sexually driven, I'm going to take it as a lack of respect because you don't want to ultimately get to know who I am first before even engaging in intimacy.
Oh, I agree.
Because they did not have that intimate connection with their prior spouse or prior relationship. So what ends up happening is they lead with that because they were so, quote unquote, deprived. Well, I'm going to be like, well, maybe you could get past high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like seriously,
and
the
just
fuck?
stop offering heels. And you could build the intimacy there within the relationship. But it does come down to because they were so deprived. Or another reason is because they were disrespected in prior relationships.
Mm-hmm.
To where their spouse was unfaithful to them. So then they built this foundation on an insecurity, and they think the only way to receive what they're ultimately looking for is by leading with, again, that sexual focus.
Sexual or money. And I think that what happens with that, and we see this, I mean, I lived in Miami. I've seen it all. And again, I mean, from an observational standpoint, from somebody who has been married for a long time, but I did work on the bar scene in South Florida for quite some time. And there is actually a lady on social media that I sent you her videos. I don't necessarily agree with everything she says, but there is something that she said once that I looked at, I'm like, that is exactly what I saw when I lived in South Florida all the time, which is a transactional relationship that is agreed upon even without the words coming out of each other's mouth. The man comes as the quote unquote provider, and it is a very explicit transaction. So the man comes with the money, the woman comes with the beauty, which there is nothing wrong with that if the woman is in it for the money. I have zero judgment on that. But that is the only value that you're bringing to the relationship. And it is a choice that you get to make the same way that it is a choice that the man gets to make. So he cannot complain that he gets a gold digger, and she can complain that she has a man who is going to judge her and only want her for what she has on the outside. It is a mutually agreed transaction. The problem with that is that the moment that man loses his money, he no longer has the value that was agreed upon in the beginning of the relationship. And the moment that she loses her beauty, if he still has the money, he's going to find somebody who can offer what she no longer can offer. And again, we're not judging whether this is right or wrong. It's just something that is. And, you know, what I feel like is the moment that you accept these arrangements that somebody comes and is like, hey, I'm going to buy you, I don't know, like a Maserati or a Bentley or a whatever. you accept that. That is the value that that man brings to the relationship. And your value to the relationship is whatever is on the outside or being the arm candy. The moment that you stop being that, he's going to offer a Bentley, a Maserati, or to take her to Paris to the next person who is willing to be the arm candy. And, again, we're not judging, but I just feel like this lack of respect is because of the transactional nature that I have perceived that a lot of relationships have become.
Right. And women are putting a price tag on themselves. And regardless of how high that price tag is, it's still a price tag when we should always present ourselves in a priceless manner.
Mm-hmm.
You can't buy a person. That's essentially saying you could buy their soul. That's terrible to sit there and put a price tag on it.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, where do you go from there? What is that telling you as a person?
Mm-hmm.
That you're only as valuable as what you're presenting on the outside, number one,
Mm-hmm.
and then what you can receive in return materialistically, rather than ultimately what we all know is what feeds our absolute soul, which is the fulfillment from true intimate relationships.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I ever told you this story. Before I met Roger, I dated this guy very briefly, like a hot 2 seconds. And there was a time that I was probably in, 5 or 6 different fitness magazines at the same time. I get in this guy's car and he has all the magazines that I was in the back seat of his car. And I'm like, ew, the fuck is happening? And I'm like, what is going on? And he's like, oh, I'm just like showing my friends. And here's the thing. I made a reel about this particular scenario, talking about how I personally find that it is disgusting. And I got a lot of pushback from men and from women saying that I wasn't grateful and how did I not appreciate that a man was, quote unquote, showing me off and that he was so proud. And I actually start to question my own sanity. And I'm like, am I being ungrateful? And that's kind of when he hit me. People are not seen for what they are. He wasn't dating me. He wasn't dating the person that was in front of me, that tomorrow I could have some kind of health condition that wouldn't allow me to be the girl in the magazine. He was dating the girl in the magazine. In the moment that I no longer could be the girl in the magazine, he was going to find the next girl on the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak for women. I cannot speak for men. I feel like women are receiving these crumbs and not seeing things for what they are, like becoming a little bit more cynical. And I hate to use this word, but you need to become a little bit more cynical to be able to see past the attention. And I know that you as a counselor, there is probably a lot of trauma associated with that. Listen, trauma village over here. But at some point, you have to put value in yourself so you are not accepting just like any fuckface telling, oh my God, you're so amazing just because he wants to take you to bed.
Well, that's exactly it. It's the idea of you're willing to accept any attention, regardless if it's positive or negative, just like a toddler, right? They behave like a complete jack off because they just want attention, regardless if it's positive or negative, to receive your attention. Women are allowing that to be the same exact example, that they'll receive anything just as long as you show me attention. And I'll give you whatever you want to, because they were lacking at some point in their life. They didn't receive what they truly needed, which was unconditional attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really noticed that. And I really was very taken back whenever I made the post, because I was like, anybody's going to see things for what they actually are.
But they don't.
And this is actually another thing, you guys listening, Jen used to compete as well. That's kind of how we met in a past life. But that's something that we see even in the competition world a lot as well, that people stay in relationships that are toxic and they stay competing because their partner is the coach and their value is directly associated with the way that they place. And in the moment that they stop competing, they stop doing X, Y, and Z, the relationship falls apart because they're no longer the first place at this place or feature magazine X, Y, and Z. And it's wild to me. And I saw that when I was competing. I'm like, yeah, I'm not about it.
They're completely defined by their situation rather than who they are. But that all comes down to they don't even know who they are.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's what I find is that so many people in general, men and women both, they have no idea who they are because they don't ultimately understand what purpose translates to. So what they do is they define themselves by what they do as their roles. And then ultimately what they can provide to other people rather than, again, recognizing who they ultimately are to the core level through purpose and what really fulfills them. That's actually what I spoke to exactly today on the mindset that we hosted, as far as just understanding what all of the relationships we keep around us, what that translates to, and how we perceive ourselves, receive ourselves, create ourselves, and then how it allows us to either define ourselves or then push us to actually find ourselves, if you think about it.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
So I'll use myself as an example. When I was married, I fell into being defined by who my ex-husband was and his roles in the town that we lived in, because they are a family, held a lot of quote unquote clout. And then I became the wife, the mom, the daughter-in-law, all of the things defined by the family who had a presence. I lost my autonomy. I was no longer Jennifer Lawson.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when I realized that I don't know who I am. Who am I? I don't know, because I've been defined by everything else other than who I ultimately was working to become in my early 20s. I left everything to become his wife. And that's what I notice a lot of women or people in general, they define themselves by everything that's around them. That's what I find people do, is they define themselves by their roles, what they do, and other people that are around them, rather than finding out who they ultimately are in their own identity.
And why do you think that that's problematic?
Because how do you ever have an individual self? How can you ever be truly happy in any relationship when you are just conforming to the relationships that are around you, rather than complementing the relationships you're in?
How long were you single before you got married the first time?
Probably about a year from the prior relationship, but I was 25, 24.
So had you always had relationships? Like, had you always been almost like quote unquote defined by the relationship that you were in?
I was.
Okay.
And I know why. Because I come from a very chaotic home life. So I was looking for stability in relationships. I was never guided to go off on my own and find myself by myself.
What was the point in your marriage that you realized, because there is a lot at stake, especially when there are children involved. It's not just like, you're dating somebody, you're like, I'm tired, I'm out. Like, there are a lot of logistical things that need to be thought about. And so what was it for you that you were like, okay, I'm out, if you feel comfortable talking about?
Absolutely. It was a culmination of things. It was over the course of time. I had my daughter, and I recognized that it was literally every day I put her down for her nap, and I would sit there and I'd think, well, what can I do? I need to do something. I felt bored. And then I found myself completely just paralyzed, because I would sit, I don't know what to do, because I left everything I ever was in the process of creating to give my everything to my family. And then, of course, those thoughts filter in. I should be so grateful because I have the most amazing life. I have a beautiful home. I have the cars. I have a family. I have health. I have wealth. I have vacation. I have everything. And then I remember thinking very clearly, she was about 2.5 years old, and I was sitting there crying while she was down for her nap, crying, saying, I don't know who I am outside of all of this. I don't know who I am if I'm not Jennifer Paraglia, who's sitting in this house. Jennifer Paraglia, who's driving that car. I don't know who I am anymore. When I was always of the mindset, I'm never getting married, I'm never having kids, I'm going to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Like, that's the ladder I was climbing before I had met my ex-husband.
I think that there is power, and there is a lot to be said about it is a thankless job to be a stay-at-home mom. You put yourself in a very vulnerable position, like financially.
I did.
Your independence, you're working around the clock, and you're not being directly compensated for it. You're not putting money towards your retirement. You're not, contributing to your social security. It's hard, not only for the now, but also for the future. And I've had guests here talking about that. And it is very purposeful to be a mother. But I think that there is this idea from a societal standpoint that is like, oh, if you're a mom, you need to be like this Mother Earth that bakes cookie and shit. And like, I definitely do not fit the bill. And that's not to say that being a mother doesn't give me purpose, but I think it would be unfair to my children and to my marriage and to myself to let my whole being be defined by my children. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Do you think that that's kind of where you found yourself, like yes, you love your children. Yes, you love, the life that you created, but you found yourself a bit purposeless.
100%, because I'm the same as you as far as I never attended one mommy and me class. The idea of playing it behooves me. I don't get it. What is this imaginary doll thing? I don't get it. Can I raise them, clothe them, feed them, bathe them, 100% care for them, nurture them as a mother? But my goal as a mother is to raise them and set them free.
Yeah.
Teach them independence. Teach them how to be their own creatures that live independent of me.
Yeah.
I can't become dependent on them as my everything.
I did go to one mommy and me class and I lasted about 15 minutes and I'm like, I'm out. Absolutely not. And no judgment. You like them? Great. I just found that a lot of the conversations I found incredibly understimulating.
I actually give so much credit to the moms that commit themselves to those things, because I'm like, a girlfriend, you got more patience than I do, because first and foremost, maybe I'm overstimulated with all the colors and the flags flying around and all the crap. Outside of that, the same thing is the conversations are just, I can't talk about baby food.
Yeah, I can talk about my kids 24/7. I do like to have the more nuanced conversations. I enjoy that. It's funny because yesterday, actually, I saw a post and it was some idiot. And he was basically saying that women are useless for all the things. Women are useless. This man is married. And he's saying that after 18, women are worth nothing unless they are married. But the sad part is that there are women listening to this. And I sit very much in the middle whenever it comes to traditionalism. I do believe that there are some beauty in the tradition, but expecting everybody to fit the bill. I would not be a nice person if I were full-time stay at home. But then you are finding yourself on social media with these conversations that it's being pushed down people's throat. That is like, man is the provider. Oh my God. If you're not, you're a pussy. And if you're not like baking cookies and wear an apron and being 100% tread wife, you're a piece of shit. You're worth nothing. And I'm like, what about the partnership? Because, even if you have a man who is a provider, God forbid something happens with him.
Right.
Like, how's your family going to stay afloat? And if the whole value of that you're placing in your partner, your wife, is what she can do at home, what about if something happens and she's not able to do all of that?
Well, and that was a thought process that I was stuck in. But then I had to take the perspective of we're in a different reality than when those standards were placed, right? So the stay-at-home mom was commonplace because it was possible to be in that traditional role where the mom didn't have to leave the home. And that's how life was created. But that's how life also grows, is that there becomes a place where there's opportunity for everyone to continue to grow into a different way. But that's also where partnership got lost, because there are people stuck in the 1960s, not realizing that we have to step outside of that and recognize that true partnership now has to be reevaluated. True communication skills have to be reevaluated, because there was no communication back then either. It was dictation, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And so it's finding now how to get that traditional thought process to become pivoted. We do have to accept that we are women, and women have their place to be that true traditional women, quote unquote. But that doesn't mean barefoot and pregnant.
Yeah. And, waiting home like with a tray of cookies and like taking the husband's shoes and shit like that. And, whenever we go back and we look at traditional roles, I mean, I don't remember the exact year, but until very recently, women were not able to get loans. So was the tradition because it was, or was it because it was imposed and women were staying in relationships because they would not be able to thrive outside of it?
I don't have enough knowledge on the history of those types of details to speak clearly to it. I'll be honest about that. There's so many different perspectives we could take into that conversation. But did they say in relationships? I think because the value of commitment was different too, though, in the perception of commitment. And then did men respect women differently?
So it was 1988 for women in business, ensuring they could obtain business loans without needing a male co-signer. It's not long ago.
No.
It's less than 40 years ago. So I understand the attachment to keeping things status quo, but at the same time, times have evolved.
Right. And that's why there has to be that now pivot to where we all understand where the pivot has to take place. And so that person that's posting that women have no purpose. Well, first off, home slice. Listen, you came from a woman, so we want to go there. But I digress.
Like, I don't really get triggered by things on the internet very much, but that did it for me because I have a daughter and I don't want my daughter to grow up thinking that her worth is only defined by who she attaches herself to.
And what that person can provide for her?
The fuck she provides for herself.
Exactly. So case in point, if we discuss the entire terrible dating world, 0 stars, do not recommend. When one of the propositions I received was, I'll buy you things. I'll spoil you rotten on the weekends. Can we have an arrangement to where I'd wine you, I dine you, I buy your heels that you wear for me. So mind you, of course, what do? I go back and I start snooping and I do my due diligence. I'm like, is that a picture of your daughter with you in your pictures?
Oh, no, you didn't. The receipts.
Yes, she's 16 and she's the love of my life.
Showtime. It's showtime.
How would you feel if a man came to her and said, would you entertain the idea of an arrangement to where I wine you, I dine you, give you all the things that you could ever want for the weekend?
Did he reply?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, geez. Just so you guys know, she's actually looking at her phone right now to give us the deets.
His response was completely irrelevant to the conversation, and it just went straight back into, if we meet in the connection and physical attraction is there in person, it shouldn't matter.
Motherfucker, it does matter.
And then my response, is that your daughter in the picture? If a man was to talk to her and talk about the connection and the first kiss and the physical attraction and wanting to get into bed with her right away without even meeting, getting to know her, you don't even know my last name. How would that make you feel?
Did he reply to that?
No. After that, he didn't. No. And then a couple weeks later, then I get a response.
Oh.
And you know what the response is?
Do you want to meet again?
Morning, sunshine.
Oh, Jesus. And that's the thing, though, because we see this and there is also like that desperation. And again, it's easy, quote unquote, for me to say because I am in a stable relationship. I've been in a relationship for a long time. So may I be a bit removed from reality? Sure. But what we see a lot of times is women, whenever they're getting to that age where it's kind of like do or die, your ovaries are itching and they completely start to
remove their value.
Yeah, remove their value. And I'm not even talking about just from a sexual standpoint. I'm not talking about just from you're going to buy me this, I'm going to do that. I'm talking about even they stop working out because, oh my goodness, like that's the time that such and such invited me to go do X, Y, and Z. They remove boundaries and they stop being themselves. And then they get into this relationship and they stop doing all the things that maintain them, like loving themselves and taking care of themselves. And I'm not going to meal prep on Sunday because such and such invited me. And it's at the time that I normally meal prep. Adjust, communicate, set boundaries on the things that are important to you. That's one thing that drives me crazy is like everybody after a relationship decides to get in shape. Why didn't you get in shape when you were in the relationship? What happened?
They feel as though they're inconveniencing the other person rather than
like setting boundaries.
But also not realizing that by you taking care of yourself, you are taking care of the other person too. Those boundaries that you're setting is setting that layer of respect that you should be receiving in return to then reciprocate respect to the other person too. It's that constant reciprocation that goes hand in hand, back and forth.
Yeah. I think it's wild, like to stop taking care of yourself because you are in a relationship and it's an inconvenience to somebody else. If you taking care of yourself is an inconvenience to the person who wants to, take you out on a date, you're going on dates with the wrong person.
Right.
Period.
Exactly. You're never going to compliment each other.
It's interesting because that was one of the, I don't want to say test because it sounds like I'm doing it or I did it to kind of test him, but it wasn't about a test. But whenever Roger came to visit me for the first time when I lived in Fort Lauderdale, my ability to earn money has always been a priority to me. I made a commitment to my work that I'm going to be there this day, this day, this day, and this day. I had people that were counting on me and waiting for me to show up at those days. It is not their problem that my boyfriend had come to visit me. And I am not going to let those people down because if he disappears, I still have bills to pay. That was always my thought process. So Roger came to visit me. And at the time I was working 3 jobs and I maintained my life as normal. And he kind of like just fit in and he was cool with that. And for me, that told me a lot about him and respecting the things that were important to me. And the same thing was true whenever I went to visit him. He was in full force rugby season. I was like, the only thing I need is for you to show me where the gym is in the train station. I would go to the gym. I would walk around. He would call me. He'd be like, where you at? I'm like, oh, I went to a nearby town. I didn't call him once to see what time you're going to be home. And I think that that really set the tone for the relationship, that it was implied that I respected the things that were important to him and that made him who he is. And he did the same.
But then that shows the level of respect you have for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So then that's what's not translating elsewhere. And you were also showing that you were not dependent on him, which then builds a different partnership that allows you to actually create the true partnership.
Yeah.
That so many people are not doing. What women end up doing is they completely devote themselves to the other person to define themselves. Then they become dependent on them. And then, of course, when they don't have that other person, who are they?
Did they find somebody else to define them and hop from relationship to relationship?
Yep. And then you get to the point, you get to a certain age where all of a sudden you're like, well, I got to latch on to somebody real quick, regardless of how I defeat who I absolutely am and deplete any level of respect because I've got a time frame that I got to adhere to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I see too, where women completely remove the thought of how to care for themselves, how to respect themselves, and just invest completely in the other person instead of themselves because they're afraid they'll run out of time.
Yeah. What has been your biggest lesson? You know, because kind of like how we started the podcast, everybody thinks the grass is always green. Oh, I'm going to get rid of him and then life is going to be beautiful and everything is going to be so amazing. And oh my God, like he's just terrible. And I know that you do have a very good co-parenting relationship with your ex-husband now, but what have been the lessons that you weren't expecting to learn in hindsight now?
Learn how to communicate properly. Communication is just the number one absolute element for every single piece of your life. And by communicate, I mean learning about the other person through asking the questions, wanting to really understand who they are, why they're doing the things that they're doing, not being aggressive in your tone, like patience in communication, not being impulsive, not reactionary.
And I think that when a relationship of husband and wife, like I'll be the person that gets the most on my husband's nerves, and he's going to be the person that gets the most on my nerves after my kids. And we know each other so intimately that it is very easy to know what is going to push the buttons. Would you say that creating the boundaries on the, absolute knots because you know what is going to trigger the person and knowing how to properly communicate?
Absolutely. Because yes, of course you're going to needle each other on occasion because that's just what you do. But to sit there and purposefully do it because you want a reaction, that's something that really has to be spoken to very clearly. Because sometimes it's subconscious and, husbands and wives will do it to each other without even knowing because it became habit somewhere. Because again, we were willing to accept it for a certain amount of time to then all of a sudden it triggers a terrible reaction. And it's going to just take that patience and saying, okay, you know what? I get it. We joked about this for a little while. I was willing to accept it, but it's really starting to bother me now to where it's causing me to look at you in a different way. And I don't want to look at you in that way. So how can we sit there together, try to move past this place of discouragement or it's going to cause me to disrespect you? And once you lose respect for your partner, game over, right? It's so hard to gain respect back.
Or that your partner, I think, especially for men, not even necessarily disrespected, but not respected because they're not the same thing. Not respecting and disrespecting are not the same thing. So I think that for men also not feeling respected in today's day and age.
That's that fine line, right? Because ultimately the man wants to be the man in the relationship, which means being masculine in certain ways. And we as women have grown to a place where we can very easily absorb that place too.
Yeah.
So how do we find that balance? And that was a major problem in my marriage.
Why is that?
Because I was a competitive dick.
Oh, I am deceased. Okay, carry on. I am dead.
because I didn't ever spend time learning who I was. So what did I feel the need to do is always prove myself to my husband rather than just recognize that it's not a matter of being in competition with him. But I should have spoken clearly and said, I'm lost. I don't know who I am. I became everything that I was supposed to be according to your pretty little world, but that denied me myself.
Mm-hmm.
But no, instead it was like, now, you know what? Fine. You go do your thing. Bring home the paycheck. I'm going to go be a competitor, and I'm going to be the best competitor I could absolutely be. And I'm going to be a competitor at home too. So when you come home, tell me about your day. Well, guess what? I did all this, that, and the third, and 10 times more. And it was a complete tit for tat.
Oh, tit for tat, I think, is something that happens in a lot of relationships, and it is incredibly toxic.
Terribly. Because then the man feels as though he's never adequate enough, right? Because he's coming home. I'm giving a laundry list of everything I did. And all you did is you went to work. You did the same thing you do every day.
Mm-hmm.
You're not helping raise the kids like I'm doing. And I was working at the time too. And then compete, like all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Then they start to feel inadequate. They feel emasculated.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm losing respect because all I'm doing is the laundry list of things that I did to where I'm convincing myself
that you're the shit.
Right. But no, I'm really not. I wasn't, because I wasn't nurturing my marriage where I should have been.
It might piggyback on this, but how do you think social media plays a role on all of it?
Well, because all you're seeing is the filtered life
Mm-hmm.
of the pretty little picture. And of course, I fell into it too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you sit there and you see this beautiful existence as these people are living, and they're so happy, hunky-dory, living the dream. Then your husband comes in like, what are you doing? What are you really giving me? Look at this life. Why are we not living this life?
Yep. It's interesting because a lot of the people living the beautiful, perfect life, I actually know a lot of them on a personal level. And I know all the shit that goes on in the behind the scenes. And I feel that that's something that's been very eye-opening.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to have that perspective. And Roger is very grounded as well. Like, he doesn't do the comparison of shit. Like, he doesn't even do social media. His social media is a picture of the kids and picture of us. And that's it. I joke, I say that his Instagram looks like a travel blogger because he only posts when we travel, and that's it. So he doesn't give a shit about comparing and things like that. But we've had conversations about this as well, because we know the people and we're like, the mathing.
Liar.
Yes, exactly.
It goes the same for men too, though. I mean, the amount of conversations I've had with men that sit there and I could tell by their social media that they're right up there trying to do the comparison game with everybody else and paint this pretty little picture. Dude, if you're taking a picture of your watch in front of your steering wheel.
Yeah, or renting a Lamborghini and pretending, the renting the Lamborghini for me does it. Or even like people that I've known that the person would post all these pictures with like bags and bags of Louis Vuitton. And then shortly thereafter, it comes out that that woman was being a victim of domestic violence. You know, you never know what's going on. And still on social media, when the dating, there is a lot more for you to window shop, I find.
There's a lot.
Not that I'm window shopping. No, like I hardly have time for the one husband I have. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's easy for you to be looking around and snooping around and being like, oh, and you always have that FOMO. Do you think that that's the reality of dating now too?
100%. Listen, I could open my app right now and I could tell you what's in my beeline, if you will.
The hell is a beeline?
I have almost 800 likes on my profile that I could choose from, essentially.
It's like pick a bitch.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's like pick a bitch.
P.S. I haven't opened it in over 2 weeks because it overwhelms me. It overstimulates. I just can't do it.
So how do you know that somebody's genuinely interested in you? Like, what are the signs? You know, if somebody's on the dating scene and they come maybe from a bit more toxic relationships and they're trying to do things differently this time, well, how do you know that somebody is truly interested in you?
They respond to your profile with insight into what you said in your profile, which means they actually read it. They didn't just look at your picture and swipe.
Mm-hmm.
So mine speaks very clearly. So me personally, what do I know? They see that I'm very straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be like, okay, I see you're a straightforward person. Here's my number. If there's any interest, this is what I would propose we would do. And they give me basically like a plot summary of, okay, this is what's going to happen.
Oh, leadership. Love it.
Exactly.
Sexy.
Take the initiative, right?
Yeah.
And I am happy to say that somebody did, but respects the boundaries that have been placed in already up front, knowing both are busy, you know, great stuff on the
Yeah.
horizon, good stuff, right? So there is just take initiative, say, okay, listen, this is my life. I see your life is this. How does it come together? If it doesn't, cool. If it does, even better.
And how do you balance dating when you have kids? Because you do have two youngish children and their dad's still very present. So how do you juggle that?
I speak very clearly to what my schedule looks like and what my availability is. And if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't fit with what they're looking for, we're not a match. It doesn't need to go any further
Mm-hmm.
than that conversation. If you're willing to respect the fact that I have limited time, but it will change over the course of time, and I'm not in this for the one night stand, and I would hope you're not
Mm-hmm.
either. Me personally, there are some people that are, and again, no judgment. If that's what you're looking for, have at it. That's for you. It's not for me. So if you feel as though you can withstand the long-term goal, then we connect when we can. And hopefully the schedules meet. If they don't, then again, we're not for it.
Mm-hmm. What would you say if you could go back in time to whenever you got yourself in the dating scene after your divorce? What lesson do you think has been the biggest over, I don't know, when you started after your divorce?
You cannot fix anybody. Do
Mm.
not ignore the red flags.
I love that. What kind of red flags are we talking about?
If somebody is unresponsive for a specific amount of time, there's a reason. Don't sit there and think it's because they were too busy or they were preoccupied with something that's complete nonsense.
I don't want to make this the Nathalia Melo show. And my husband is far from perfect. Okay. I ain't nobody perfect. I'm not a peach to live with either. Roger, because at the time he was living in England, and the shows that I did were the Arnold, which is in the beginning of the year. And then in September, the Olympia. So in rugby season is long as shit. So he only had off around May, like from May to beginning of July. And there were some kind of like small breaks here and there. So it was hard to coordinate for us to travel and me working 3 jobs. Roger once came to Florida from England for 36 hours. And you're going to tell me that a motherfucker cannot drive 15 minutes to come see you because he's too busy.
Yeah, exactly.
And listen, he is not perfect. I'm not perfect. And I'm not saying this like to be, oh my goodness, so holy. Like my husband is just the best and I'm so lucky. That's not what I'm trying to say. My point is that you can find plenty of women to report that if a man is interested, he came to the bar that I used to work at. He didn't know my name. He went to the Facebook page of the bar that I worked at, looked through the photos, found a picture that looked like me, found me on Facebook at the time, and he slid into my DMs and was like, hey, what's up? Were you working the top bar at this bar, this time? But you think, oh no, like he couldn't call me. He has your telephone number. If he wants to call you, he will.
Exactly. Well, it's been 3 days. He's had his kids. He's busy. He works and he's got his kids. Okay. Guess what? We've got that technology that throws a quick text just by saying, hey, Google.
But it just baffles me whenever I hear this. Oh, he was just so busy. And I'm like, stop it. And I can say this because I have also been the person who was a doormat for people who didn't value myself.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. So when you sit there and you try to say that he's just busy or give all the excuses to him, you're not seeing what you're ultimately worth.
Mm-hmm.
You don't understand your value.
Mm-hmm.
Even in a marriage, if your husband can't sit there and on his way home from work, let's just say you are a stay-at-home mom. God bless your heart for having the patience to be one. I give you so much credit. I just want to say that. Okay.
And you can say this because you have been a stay-at-home mom. Like, we're not judging. And I stayed home with my kids until we could afford to put them in daycare. So I want to make it very clear, we're not saying this from a place of judgment. We're truly saying this because we know how challenging it is.
I'm giving you credit. You know, if your husband doesn't respect you enough to call on his way home and say, is there anything you need? Can I pick up anything? I know you've been stuck at home all day with the kids. Yeah. I know it must be hard. Is there anything I can do when I get home for you?
Oh, that requires some training, though. A tiny bit of training, like a refresher recollection that you need to.
But that's communication, right? That's a wife then saying, you know what, honey, I've had a really rough go for a little while. Could you just please try and do your best to maybe call me on your way home and see if I need anything?
Right.
How hard is that?
100%. And I think that that is that expectation. Oh, he should have known. Oh, well, but he doesn't read minds. So we need to speak clearly on what your expectations are or what you need. Not even expectations, because expectation is the worst way to live. What your needs are. And if that's a big piece of your needs, you need to communicate that clearly.
It's interesting, though, you say that expectations is not the right way to put it, but at the same time it is, because a lot of the other things that we don't realize with relationships is it is a business, because there's so much responsibility that goes into running a home, kids' activities, the extracurriculars, working the jobs. Like, there is business aspects to it. So certain things do require that, forward vision, and you are constantly growing. So then there's expectations that go with that growth pattern in relationships.
I don't know, because I think that whenever you have expectations, you remove a big piece of the communication.
Well, no, I'm not saying to expect it without speaking to them. Let me put it that way.
That's exactly what I mean. Like, I expected my husband to know that he should do the dishes because I cooked the dinner, which fair. That is a fair expectation. However, you don't know what kind of upbringing this man had. Like, maybe his mom did everything and he grew up watching the mom doing everything. So it might be a case that you need to be like, hey, when I cook, you do the dishes. And when you cook, I do the dishes. And that's that clarity of communication.
What's the saying? Unspoken expectations leads to predetermined disappointment.
That was what I was saying with the problem with expectations. So I think that it's good that we clear that up. And I actually had a call with a new member, and she is in the dating scene in her midlife. And we had a great conversation. I told her that we were recording this episode because she was like, I want to elevate myself, because I know that whenever I elevate myself, I'm not happy with the people that I'm associating with right now and what I'm attracting. And I'm paraphrasing her here just for conciseness. Whenever I elevate myself, I'm going to start to attract people that are also attracted to that elevated version of me. And I think that that's where a lot of women miss the boat.
Yes. And I can say I struggled with that too, because I would question, am I at that same caliber, quote unquote, of man that I'm trying to attract or be? Yeah, and be within that environment. I could go to the White House and I know I could walk through with confidence, but in the dating world, it changes. It's a different dynamic, right? To be involved intimately with somebody at that level. So it's a matter of then how do you build that confidence within yourself to present yourself with such a self-respect that translates to being at that elevated level.
It just clicked for me. And it's not just about that, because you know that you're bringing so much to the table and that you are worthy of the boundaries and the expectations that you're setting, that you're not afraid of losing. Because the thing is that whenever, let's say that you have that one hit wonder, that you go out with someone that you feel like is out of your league, you are going to bend over backwards because you're afraid of losing that. And then you're going to start to lose yourself in that relationship and your boundaries, and you're going to start to tolerate things that otherwise you wouldn't, because you're afraid of losing that, because in your mind, that person is above you. But whenever you elevate yourself, and it's like, take it or leave it. This is what it is.
Which then translates to you can't buy that woman anymore.
100%. And again, all before Roger and I started dating, there was this little somebody, and I was bartending at the time, and he asked me to go somewhere with him. And it was like a few days before the event, and I had to work. I remember very vividly, it was a Wednesday, and Wednesday was one of my best nights, but it was also hard to get somebody to cover, especially 2 days before. And then I was like, I can't go. And it was like an opportunity that anybody would stop and just go. And he was taken back, and he was like, why? And I'm like, because I made a commitment with my work. I got to work. And then he was like, well, but how much is it that you make? And I'll give you the money that you normally make working that shift so you can come. And I'm like, no, I think you don't understand. It isn't about the money. It is about the commitment that I made to the people who have hired me, that I'm going to be there. And then he was like, oh, okay. Like, that was that. And then after the event that I was supposed to be in, he came to my establishment of work just to say hello, which was 2 hours away by plane. But that's the thing. Before that season of my life, I would have dropped everything.
Right.
I'll pack tomorrow. Yeah, no problem. But I found the strength to see my worth and to set stronger boundaries and to, elevate myself through fitness.
Yep. Absolutely.
Do you find that you found that through fitness as well? That fitness helped?
Absolutely. The routine that it helped me establish, feeling physically stronger and having the endurance to push through those types of situations that fitness triggers is going to allow you to just represent yourself in just a different level of strength. You're foundationally rooted in strength on all levels.
Mm-hmm. Success in fitness is to fail. If we put into context, like you build muscle by failure. So it really is a trial run of life, I believe. You get up, maybe you go on a shitty date or you have a shitty day and then you get up and you try it again.
Yep.
Would you get married again? That's my last question.
Absolutely.
Would you?
Absolutely.
That is a very emphatic response. Why is that?
I've put a lot of thought into it. It's something that I know to my heart of hearts because I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what it really means. The idea of commitment, even when I first got married, I didn't know. It wasn't taught through just my own course of study. And then, of course, experiences. I've learned so much. I know how to do it now. I get it.
Knowing how to do it is one thing. And, we have data that second marriage on average, 60 to 67 failure rate. And then for after that is 73 and higher.
Because you're stuck in your ways.
That's kind of my point. And I'm not jinxing it or anything, but you coming prepared and having the enlightenment, because that's one of the biggest things that make second and third marriage fail is the baggage from previous relationships. Everybody's a narcissist. Oh, because he was a narcissist. And listen, I am 100% sure that there are the men or the women who are narcissists, who are a piece of shit. Like we've seen it working with a lot of women. We know that. But I think that at some point there has to be a level of personal accountability, because if you saw that the guy was a piece of shit and a narcissist, and then you went on and you not only, married the man and then you had a bunch of kids with the man and you stayed there for a bunch of years, and I'm not victim shaming, but there is a level of personal accountability and responsibility that we can learn from, not with an eye of regret, but it's like, what is it that I missed that maybe next time I don't do it again?
Trying to fix the person, not ignoring the red flags.
And again, I want to make it very clear, this is in no way, shape, and form victim shaming, because I do know that there are abusive relationships.
Very different.
But I feel like there is a level of accountability, that agency that we have to take. What did I miss? What is it that for the next relationship I can do differently on my end that I can change? But at the same time, there is still the other 50 of a relationship that might not have been so enlightened to remove the baggage and be open to starting fresh again. So how do you work that?
Well, the other thought too that I just had as you were talking is the personal accountability is also not what did I also miss, but why did I choose to remain? Why did I choose this person? Why did I not learn in the process of and try to adjust during?
And if there is no adjustment, then peace.
That too. Why did I stay stuck?
Yeah, because we are in a free country, and, I don't think that divorce is the answer for everything. I do come from a broken home and it fucking sucks. So, it's not encouraging that, but at what cost are you staying?
And what is it ultimately doing to potentially your children by staying?
Yeah.
What are you showing your children? And what are you telling yourself?
I love that. I could talk about this all day, Jen. It's so cool because I love that you have a very honest perspective. And I think that you are a very good example of what I was talking about ownership, because I'm sure that your ex-husband is not perfect, but you are taking ownership and taking agency on the things that were within your control and what you could have done differently. That's the only thing that you can do.
Absolutely. We talk about it all the time. Like we actually have that great of a friendship now to where we talk about it all the time.
I love that. And it is so important for your kids too.
Yeah. Well, listen. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I won't go there.
Hopefully nobody that knows him listens to this podcast. We love him.
Oh, he'd love it.
Is amazing. Best ex-husband ever. Woohoo! Go, go, go.
Listen, if he was not dating somebody for the past 3 years, I would say, great guy, eligible bachelor. Totally. I would promote him 100%.
Promote him.
Just not for me.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Jen. And thanks everybody for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts on this podcast. If you have any suggestions and ideas on topics that we can talk about, I think that it would be great to talk about something that you want to hear. Jen and I are very much an open book. If you couldn't tell up until today, now you know all the intricacies of our lives. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jen. And I can't wait for our next episode.
Me too. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram. Links are down below as well. And let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. This is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.